According to leaked documents, Britain is in talks with Costa Rica, Armenia, Botswana and Ivory Coast in a bid to replicate the Rwanda scheme with them. Now, a long list of countries were assessed against feasibility criteria, and these were the ones that they landed on. Officials were impressed with Costa Rica's immigration laws and policies and its widespread access to medical facilities, education and employment. But it's reported that the talks have stalled because of the delays with the Rwanda scheme. The ministers are hoping that once the flights are up and running to Rwanda, then progress can be made with other countries. But do you think this is a good idea? Angela, I'm going to start with you.
Well, the legislation to declare whether Rwanda is a safe place to send people who try to get into this country illegally is likely to be passed very shortly. They're discussing it today in Parliament, and obviously the Lords have sort of secreted their checks and balances within that. But ultimately, yes, exactly.
Secreted.
Is secrete good?
Yeah,
it
works.
It feels like some kind of oozy thing, but anyway.
Okay, thanks.
Says
he with a shirt like that.
It's got a negative connotation to it. It suggests that you might not have liked what the Lords has suggested.
Okay, well, it's a whole different discussion, but what I would say is this, is that clearly we cannot continue with the so-called business model that we have now, which is spending a fortune every day housing people that come into this country illegally in hotels and wherever. We don't have the infrastructure to support it. Meanwhile, most importantly, you have exploitative gangs who are profiteering from people's misery or desperation, or just because they want to come as economic migrants, and people are falling into the sea and drowning. Well, so from a humanitarian perspective, that has to stop.
534 migrants crossed the Channel just yesterday. That's a huge number, and we do want to see that reduced. Henry, is sending them to Costa Rica, is it more palatable than Rwanda?
I don't think either of them is palatable. Why have we chosen Costa Rica, a country that's much smaller than ours, where the average GDP per capita, so the average amount that a person earns per capita, is about $13,000. Ours is $46,000. They're a middle-income country. They've got about, 400,000 refugees at the moment, mainly from Venezuela and Nicaragua, out of a population of 5 million. That's about 7% of the population is a refugee. Here in this
but
country,
it wouldn't happen if they wouldn't agree to it. Costa Rica have to agree to it.
They haven't agreed to it.
And they haven't agreed to it yet.
It just feels fairly impractical given the difficulties with Rwanda and grubby. Here we are, shopping around the poor and middle-income countries of the world to use them as a dumping ground for a problem that we and our European counterparts do not want to solve, do not have either the wherewithal, the gumption, the initiative. I mean, much more can be done. I agree with you about the business model. It has to be smashed. And a couple of months ago, the Germans managed to smash one of the top rings in Europe, or I think it was mainly Iraqi Kurds in Germany, but it was a cooperation between the French, the Belgian and the German government. They've arrested 19 people. They'll soon be on trial. That's just one of a number of gangs. The intelligence needs to be shared. We need to cooperate more and bust the business model by going for the gangmasters at the top.
But we're not on mainland Europe. So in terms from a geographical perspective,
we cooperate closely.
Okay, we have spent, what is it, £478 million, that lump sum that went to France in order to help from that perspective, sort of almost to become the kind of Northern France police officers for us. That hasn't helped. The fact that people are arriving in a safe country, I hear the humanitarian argument about those who are fleeing desperate circumstances, but they're arriving in a safe country, crossing various safe countries in Europe, and still want to make a very hazardous journey across the Channel to the UK at great expense as well. Something has to stop. And if
the vast majority do not come across the Channel. The vast majority stay in places like Germany, France,
that's not
Greece,
our concern. But that's not our concern. We're concerned with I don't know what the number was, 500 and something that stormed
594
The days are longer, the weather is better. That is only going to get more it's going to increase in terms of frequency.
Well, actually, last year those numbers went down.
Yeah, so and that's because of the returns agreement with Albania, though, wasn't it? That's why.
Do you think that's what it is? Because
it is,
I'm wondering whether Angela might think that it's actually the threat of Rwanda.
No, absolutely not. It's definitely the returns agreement.
Well, the point is, unless we vox pop those that land on our shore, I'm sorry to stop you. I know you've just made a hazardous journey across the Channel. Somebody with a clipboard goes, did you come here because of... Obviously, I mean, I'm being deliberately facetious. That's not going to happen. But everybody hand rings over, they wring their hands in the heart.
Do you see me wringing my hands? I'm not wringing.
You don't. Not you personally. But there's a lot of bleeding hearts that talk about this. And I'm not being dismissive of the suffering of those who flee real danger. And this country has always offered sanctuary country for people in those situations.
Grudgingly, a lot of the time.
Well, OK, well, whatever and I agree with you. Believe me, we can go into that.
Even during the Second World War, the Jewish people, we've rewritten history as though we welcomed all... No, kinder transport and all of that. But a lot of it was grudging, and the numbers should have been higher.
The numbers are higher. You had
Jewish
to be
people.
sponsored with the kinder transport.
Yeah.
I agree with, and I'm the granddaughter of a
Yes.
refugee. Lots of people are, and I understand all that. But in the absence of a credible alternative, Labour constantly poke this scheme and they pull it to shreds. What is the alternative? I'd love to know, because if there is one, I'm all ears and I'm ready for it.
Sir Keir Starmer says that he wants to go after the gangs, which you mentioned earlier on. How he's going to do that, I don't think hasn't been specified. Let's go to calls and find out what you think. Helen from Cardiff. Costa Rica, does it sound better than Rwanda?
Well, I've been to Costa Rica and it's absolutely lovely. And what I've actually done, I mean, the cost of this is absolutely ludicrous. I mean, we've still got that boat, which is costing, I think, £3 million a week. Plus, I mean, each person we're supposed to be deporting to Rwanda is costing the government £1.6 million. So what I've actually offered is, I'm a British citizen. Me and my friend and my husband are more than happy to go and live in Costa Rica. The government can pay us exactly the same amount of money. We'll save on all the legal fees. We'll save on all the litigation. A migrant can come over and live here, probably a young migrant, increasing the birth rate. Marvellous.
OK, that sounds like that's definitely, a plan. Is it a good one, Angela?
Well, I'll tell you what, Helen, I mean, you're right, because when they show the footage here and other sort of in papers and stuff about Costa Rica, and I know people who've been to Costa Rica, look at it. It looks like an island, absolute island paradise. And I think that almost distracts from the specific point, which is, do we process offshore and appropriate and send what was essentially our problem elsewhere? That's the issue, and I think it's an important
immigration. Sorry, I've just listened to you. So if we're looking at not increasing immigration, why don't we have one in, one out? I've been to Costa Rica. If the government's more than willing to pay me £1.6 million, of which the amount is actually sort of, it's getting higher and higher as time goes on. And we've got these people in detention centres, so why don't we just go and let them crack on with it?
I've got to say, Helen, it's very interesting your suggestion.
£1.6 million to Costa Rica.
But I'm not sure it's scalable.
I'm in my 50s, so no one will have to worry about my pension or obviously my health. I mean, there's a really good healthcare system in Costa Rica, and then someone can come and live here. No problem at all.
Here's the problem with your scheme, Helen, which is that when people cross the channel, often they don't want to be part of the administrative process. They don't want, from a bureaucratic position, to be in any way kind of accountable. So there are stories of people literally throwing their documents in the water.
They're advised to do that. They're told to do that by the gangmaster, so they can't be sent back to a country which has their stamp on their passport. That's
when you do that, you're an accountable British citizen with a whole kind of administrative paper trail which will show who you are, what you do, what you're entitled to, and you want to be exchanged with somebody who's come here illegally under circumstances that Henry has just described. I'm not sure it's exactly a kind of an easy exchange rate there.
I think we need to jump on something. You keep saying illegally. I mean, the UNHCR, the UN High Commission for Refugees, and the Geneva Convention of 1951, they say there is no such thing as, quotes, an illegal asylum seeker. There may be processes, legal processes, but we don't have any for the vast majority of people who want to leave their country. If you are an Afghan under a very, very restricted scheme, or someone from Hong Kong or Ukraine, there are legal routes. There are no legal routes for anybody else.
Helen, it's a very interesting idea you've come up with, and I'm sure lots of people would want to take that up. I'm just not sure that's something that the government would go for, but thank you so much for your call. Jamie from London, what's your thoughts on sending asylum seekers or, people that come to this country illegally, as Angela would say, sending them to Costa Rica?
I should think the government should stay clear of that, because this will be regressive in the sense that then you have all these human rights lawyers who will be challenging the government again. That will take another year or 2 years to go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court already said that the government's plan to send people to Rwanda is bordering on illegal. However, they did say...
So, Jamie, interestingly, what the Supreme Court said was that Rwanda wasn't a safe country. They didn't deem it to be safe.
Yep.
What the government are trying to do now is put in things in place with Rwanda to try and rectify that issue. Costa Rica is an unknown. Actually, we don't know what the Supreme Court would say about Costa Rica, whether they would think that that was a safe country. What they didn't say was sending asylum seekers to a third-party country in order to be processed. They didn't say there was anything wrong with that.
Hold on. Now, if they have to send people to Costa Rica or intending to do that, they will be challenged in court. This will take several years. However, let me go back to the Supreme Court about Rwanda. The Supreme Court said if the government can put certain things in place, yes, it's okay. That's what the Supreme Court said. Anyway, let's leave that aside. The reason why you find this as a big problem for the country is because the government, which they can easily do, even tomorrow, and create asylum departments in every embassy in the world. That's all they can do. That's the easiest thing to do. Seriously.
That
so that when you have
been mentioned, Jamie, for some reason it hasn't been acted upon, but I think in the end we will come back to that. I mean, if you look at the programme that Israel had between 2013 and 2018, they had something like 4,000 Sudanese and Eritrean asylum seekers, and Israel decided we don't want these people here anymore. They had an agreement with Rwanda, they sent them to Rwanda, and very quickly Rwanda deported them to Uganda.
I think there's
despite assurances.
Yeah, I think there's a fundamental issue here, which we are, because different countries have got different approaches, and I think there's a fundamental issue here is, will the notion of you coming to the UK, because that's your chosen end point, it will be a deterrent if they say you come here, but actually you're not going to be allowed to stay here. So whether it's Costa Rica, whether it's Rwanda, wherever it is, the fact is that when you land, this is not where your final destination will be. Is that sufficient of a deterrent? And I think that's why I think the policy, hopefully, people won't be going to Rwanda because they won't want to come here because
so you think that it will whittle out the real asylum seekers, in your view, to the economic migrants?
Yes, I think the issue is that if you are coming here because you think you will do well and do better here than somewhere else, and you're not allowed to stay here, whether it's Rwanda or Costa Rica or wherever, there is something about the UK that is drawing people like a magnet. I know it's only small.
They speak English?
No, there's a few things. One of them, English. It's the history, the sense that we go around the world, and we do, talking about the rules-based order, democracy, fair play, and all of that, and the history. And people believe it. If you keep saying this about yourself, going around the world saying...
But it's an issue of safety. When you go to France, all of those things will be in place. You know, it's a civilised Western country. It doesn't matter. When you are running from a place of where you are unsafe, you are happy to land where you will then be safe.
Where you'll be safe and where you can live. Where you can live.
I think some people also take it back to the colonial times when we just went around and took over places, and so we imparted our culture and we imparted our language on other people, and so when they get into trouble, we're the place that they come to because they've got more information about that. Jamie, thank you for your call. Mark from Hull, what's your thoughts on this? Costa Rica, does it sound any good to you?
No, I don't think any country should be used. And I think you're starting the conversation off with your guest speakers, and the lady says they're illegal straight away. You're only illegal if you are falsely claiming asylum. So by saying you're illegal, it's causing a culture war. And there's a lot of hatred and racism at the moment about this.
Do you think that's inflammatory language?
Can I clarify that? What I'm... Apologies if I didn't make that clear, Mark. What I'm saying is this is an illegal way to enter the country. So if you're... I mean, we're splitting hairs over the definition. I'm sorry.
Enter the country. There's no... if these people... Like, we've got involved in a lot of conflicts and made a lot of... Like, Libya is basically a lawless country now. So lots of people have left some of these countries. They can't just write on a piece of paper, ring a telephone call and get asylum into the UK. So there is no legal way.
Yeah.
No, I understand that.
Mark is right. I mean, if you look at where the people are coming from, the one crossing the channel in small boats, it is places like Syria, places like Afghanistan, Eritrea,
but why isn't France
Sudan.
good enough?
Well, a lot of them do stay in France, but for reasons of culture, language, etc., they think, and also Britain. Mother of Parliaments and all that.
But they're prepared to put their own children at risk. You know, they're prepared
to... Doesn't that show how desperate they are? Tony from West Yorkshire, what's your thoughts on this?
Good morning, Storm.
Hi.
I'd just like to mention an idea that I had Well, we buy the small boats up, in other words, the dinghies. Follow the trace to where the dinghies are being made and pay more for them than the slave traders are.
Okay, so you want to go to the manufacturers of the dinghies. I'm not sure we can call them slave traders, because actually they might be just a normal company producing dinghies, and they're selling it to people they believe are using them for very valid uses. So I don't know if we can blame those companies, but certainly you're saying go back to the source. So we're talking about these gangs that are essentially trafficking people across the channel.
But it's like whack-a-mole, isn't it?
If we have bigger boats, we could turn them back. Yeah, that's possible.
Well,
but
the
to go
difficulty...
and buy the dinghies, even if we paid 20,000 apiece for dinghies, it's going to save us money.
I mean, but it is going to make people who just want to buy dinghies for very valid reasons not be able to afford them, Tony.
Absolutely.
I think the gang situation and tackling them is a great one. I think the problem is, from what I've read, having never searched for one before, is that all you actually need is a mobile phone and the ability to buy one of these dinghies. So it is whack-a-mole once you...
It is whack-a-mole.
But there is intelligence sharing, and that's why the Germans were so successful in cracking down on one of the top gangs in Europe. More of that, and it makes it more and more difficult for these people to operate.
But I do like the out-of-the-box thinking there, Tony, with how can we tackle these people, and they've all got dinghies.
Can we introduce them to Helen?
Yeah, I know.
Tony and Helen is doing the
together.
one out. I mean, listen, the way the government and the opposition are at the moment, it's all bets are off for any kind of policy at the moment.
Tony, thank you so much for your call. Thanks for all your calls on this. Now,